and they were given that opportunity to speak. Board of Finance may allow others. It's crystal, and it's not exclusive to only those people. You did not violate the sentence, the spirit of the charter, and the proceedings and vote was valid. So,
could you reread the piece from the charter that you're quoting? Could you just reread what you just...
Sure, the whole thing. The Board of Finance shall hold one or more public hearings concerning the proposed town budget. One of such hearings to be held not less than 14 days before the annual town meeting, at which hearings, any person qualified to vote at the annual town meeting shall have an opportunity to be heard. The Board of Finance may then revise the proposed town budget as it deems advisable, and it may, by a vote of 2/3 of its members, restore any items, expenditures eliminated, reduced by the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, town opinion on that, very clear that you're not in violation. I also want to point very clearly to Monday's meeting, the annual town budget meeting. The annual town budget meeting should be limited to a public presentation of the town of East Lyme budget by the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Education, with an opportunity for the public participation by comments and questions thereafter. All three groups get up and speak at the town budget meeting according to our charter, not just the Board of Finance. We've been doing that all along. And that's important to read the whole sentence, not just bits and pieces of it. We will have our meeting on Monday night, I think it's 7:30 in the auditorium. Okay? We
in the high school, right?
In the high school auditorium, it's 7:30. With some scheduling issues, we moved it.
Is that a change in time?
Traditionally, it's been 7 o'clock.
But it's 7:30.
It's 7:30. It's posted for 7:30. It will be in the auditorium. The play that was excellent last weekend they've struck the set, as they say, and we can use the auditorium again. You all know about Guy's Oil burning. They lost, I believe, 6 trucks and several buildings on their property. They've already been in to see me about rebuilding, which is great news, for a 4th generation business, 4 generations. We had our volunteer crews come out. We had mutual aid from Old Saybrook all the way up 395 and over 95, very far east. Many trucks, many personnel. We lost a lot of equipment through fuel oil being damaged, some of the turnout gear, some of the hoses sitting in puddles of diesel fuel can't be restored and will need to be replaced. We're working with Guy's Oil's insurance company to try to get reimbursement from there. If not, we're going to look to KERMA, our insurance policy, and if not, we're going to look for a special appropriation. But they're short right now, and we'll be relying on mutual aid if a fire were to occur tonight. Niantic's sitting there without enough hose and with turnout gear that they don't have enough gear for the people that might turn out, and also the foam, the fire retardant foam is depleted, so we don't have money to have them replenish it and then being reimbursed. We're still waiting for the insurance company. So we obviously have another fire company in the north part of town. We have great brothers and sisters in area towns that will come out and help, and they've proven that mutual aid is an important part of firefighting in New England these days, especially with volunteer fire departments. Segueing to that conversation, because it's a big conversation. It will involve us in the coming year. If you've read the paper, I met with 6 different first selectmen this week together to talk about what they all do. It turns out they all do something different. Their relationship with the ambulance, their relationship with the volunteer crew, their relationship with the town, and paid versus unpaid versus volunteer versus paid full-time employee of the town. Police officers, public works guys are also volunteers, and they can't be. According to federal labor, FLSA, what's the S?
Standards.
Standards. So apparently this has been brought up a couple decades ago to area towns, and everybody kind of went like this. But we have a really, we have a liability here. We're doing it wrong. Someone could call us on it. We might owe back pay to volunteers, and Waterford is facing just that, as you saw in the paper today. We've been keeping it down, and we're working with our labor attorney just to find a solution. The solution, there's 4 entities, right? There's the town, there's the Ambulance Association, Inc., there's Flanders Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., and Niantic, Inc. So when does a stipend become pay? We'll find out. I'm going to do my digging there. When someone's volunteering for the fire department, are they volunteering for a fire department or are they volunteering for the town? Because there is a difference. And if they're volunteering for the Ambulance Association, again, with a different employee identification number, and it's a 501c3, and different taxes and all that, are they volunteering for the Ambulance, Inc., or for the town? So we need to open up all that can of worms up and really kind of dismantling the relationship sounds harsh. We need to pull it all apart and then put it back together so it works for the next 20 years. What we have has been working, but we know we're seeing less and less volunteers come out. So the volunteers we do have are the ones that are paid sometimes too. This situation would have, you've met John Dwyer, our chief of Niantic. He volunteers as the chief, but he needs a part-time job, and he gets on that ambulance, he gets paid. He'd have to resign as chief. So you can't be both. You can be a full-time firefighter, you can be a part-time firefighter, or you can be a volunteer, and you shall never be both.
So may I interject? My understanding when I read the paper today was that the state law conflicts with the federal law.
There's a little bit of that too, isn't there? Yeah. So marijuana laws conflict with federal marijuana laws, don't they? So there's talk about, let's get our legislature to make sure we're in the clear statewide, and is with our labor boards and our people in our state that would enforce this. And if we're all on page and we're violating federal law, can we do that or can we not? We'll have to work that out. And this is a major deal. We've been hearing about lack of volunteers. We've been hearing about we're going to need more and more paid. We're talking about a full-time fire force here, which would crush us all. So we're working on that, and we're searching for the loophole. Again, is kind of negative. We're searching for the room to maneuver in this and be able to define certain people. But we have a lot of our volunteers are town employees. Again, Jim Lewandowski on the police force, Rick Pape on the water company. They're fully in public works employees. They're fully engaged in our town, and fully engaged as volunteers in our town as well. And that, according to what we're hearing, is not allowed. So that priority moved to the top this week. So we're working on that.
So I think then maybe perhaps I misunderstood when I read that article in the paper today. I thought that if you are a town employee in one town, that you could volunteer in a different town and not be in violation of the FLSA.
And that is still correct.
So that's why, some paid firefighters in New London volunteer for Niantic, and maybe vice versa.
Right.
But
that's okay.
And that's okay, still going forward. Okay. But you're saying that within the town, within the entities that we have, the police department, I guess, is really an entity of the town, and so is the fire department. So it's one entity, and that's why they can't cross.
And paychecks come out of home office here.
Okay.
So so we're working on that. Some towns are doing different things to maybe get around it, but now they're being called that they're not really getting around it, calling things stipends instead of paychecks, paying the fire departments a lump sum and letting them disperse. So the town is paying for fire service. The taxpayers are paying for fire service, giving it to the fire departments, and letting them distribute
manage it.
and manage, and therefore they're your employees. But that calls into question liability that they couldn't afford. We have to have a separate policy. I mean, it would just defeat the purpose. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But it's a hot button issue right now.
It's of concern.
Very. I'm losing sleep over it. And
In
the middle of it, we have one of the biggest fires in our town in the last 20 years.
Which needed every volunteer.
And volunteers came out, and so it's business as usual. As much as I've asked the chiefs to maybe, if they could, when they see an opportunity, to scale back and lessen the crossover, they can't, because these guys are they're in there. It's their lives. If they're not being paid, they're volunteering, and vice
So
versa.
all these towns are dealing with the same issue?
Yes.
And
As
so
you
you're collaborating with them, with
Yeah.
other first selectmen?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the disadvantage, I don't want to prolong this meeting, but the disadvantage is every town does it differently.
Yeah.
Has a different relationship. It would drive you nuts. There's not a best business practice. There should be a boilerplate,
A model.
right? There should be a model.
Yes.
This is how you do it. You get a town of 20,000 people with this many square miles, and this 2 fire departments. Waterford has 5. Montville, I think, has 2, or Salem has 2, Montville has 3 or something. But this is what you do, and this is the relationship you have, and this is within the law, and this is how you save money, and this is how you get ambulances out at 2 in the morning, or on Sundays, or on whatever. This is how you do it. And not one town has a good solution, really, because they all have their, pros, a lot of pros. We value what we have. But and it's scary to dismantle it because you got to put it back together, and it's got to be better, and it's got to last 20 or 30 or the next 50 years. It's daunting.
Good luck.
Yeah. Thanks.
Anything else?
No, we have 2 great town department heads ready to
Rock and roll?
present to you tonight,
Okay.
so we should move right to that.
All right.
Unless you have anything for me.
Any questions for our first selectman? Okay. Our next item is our finance director reports.
One thing I just wanted to comment, as you know, we closed on 277 West Main Street last week, so in order to do that, we had a note sale. And I just wanted to let you know that we had 6 bids for that sale, and the low rate was 1.9549.
Excellent.
So we were very pleased to
Yeah.
get 6 bids.
That's great.
Yeah. And
Good money.
so, anyway.
The highest was 3%, somewhere in the 3s.
2.9.
This is short money, short-term money?
Yeah, we set it up to mature in August when the rest of the notes that we have are maturing. This way, to get everything all in the same way.
Great.
So the reports were in your packages. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I have a question on the revenue account sheet.
Sure.
Education cost sharing.
Yes.
So are we going to get the remainder of that 26,109? I see there was a payment this month
Yes,
of
there
$3
was.
million and change. Are we done? Can we still expect to receive the rest of that?
I believe that would have been the final payment that we received.
So why do we have 26? It looks like we still have 26,109 to collect.
I'm going to go back and look at the state projections, but sometimes they do make an adjustment during the year, and that's typically when they make an adjustment, it would be in that dollar range. But I'm going to go back and do some research on that for you.
All right, so it's possible that we will not receive that.
Yes.
Okay. Some of these revenues are, they're not that big, but like I look at, so building permits is up quite a bit, right?
Yeah, and remember that we've discussed that. That's because we received the Costco permit this fiscal
Right.
year, and we hadn't planned for it because at the time that we did the budget last year, Costco was off the table.
Okay. Ooh, excuse me. Any questions for Anna?
I had another revenue question.
Sure.
We budgeted $41,500 in investment earnings last year. And when I add up all of the accounts, we're in the neighborhood of $104,000 in investment earnings. So from account 700-004 through on the second page, 700-704, all of those interest earnings relate to the budgeted amount of $41,500?
Right.
Okay, so right now we're at $104,000 in investment earnings for those accounts. We budgeted $41,500. What will happen to the 60 grand?
So that all becomes part of our results of operations. In other words, how much more are we receiving in revenues than we expend? And that becomes, as I said, part of our operating results, which is becomes part of fund balance. Because fund balance, you know, by definition, is your cumulative effect of operating results over time.
Okay, so it's just netted with all of the other adjustments. It will go back into the fund balance.
That's correct, yes.
Could we make a special request to appropriate, say, 50,000 of that before the end of the year to move it to the special undesignated balance, our rainy day fund? So my concern is that it takes a long time to figure out what that number is. You know, it takes a long time for the books to close, and as we're cleaning the laundry and figuring out what's happening, to me it seems like that figure is a solid number, right? I think it's a solid number right now, right? Because this gets booked on a monthly basis. So
the interest.
The interest.
Correct.
So do we have to wait till the end of the year closes out to figure out what the net amount of the operating results are, or can we make a special motion to move 50 grand into the undesignated fund balance before the end of the year closes out? I guess that's my question.
I don't think that's necessary, because, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, if you choose, you can do
Sure.
that.
Okay.
However, at the end of the day, it becomes part of your undesignated fund balance.
So I think with the excess funds there, it becomes a little easier to ask for appropriations for certain things before the year closes out. And I feel like if we just take care of this right now and put it into savings, then it's not really touchable. And I would like to hear what the rest of the board feels about that idea.
So you sort of, I don't want to say lockbox it, but
Yeah.
save it so it doesn't get, yeah. So that's not something you ordinarily do?
No, I mean, so in other words, like, for example, if, like, as you pointed out, you know, we have a surplus in that particular revenue account. So, let's just, well, use the example of the 50,000. If somebody needed 50,000 for a specific purpose, because we knew we had the excess there, we could increase that revenue account and then do the special appropriation. That would have to come before this board to approve it anyway. And so at that point you could say no to such a request.
You also only have one more meeting left before the end of the year. And we couldn't, could you move this over without an agenda item anyway? So it would have to be in June anyway, so.
Right.
But-
Understood, but yeah.
Either way,
But
that movement would happen next month. You'd either spend it, or if you don't spend it, it's gonna be sitting there to be put into fund balance. Again, you only have a month left.
How is the operating surplus looking?
So,
we could make a motion to add it this evening. That would be an option. I believe.
To add it
Karen,
to-
Well,
Karen,
you know,
can't we
I
do that?
have to- I
If the
wonder
board
if
so
that has to
desires,
come
can't we make a motion to add,
that's a
or
good
we
question.
can't make a motion to add an item onto the
Well, you
agenda?
can, but
can.
it does have to go to selectmen first, as an appropriation. And then it does have to go to town meeting,
Well, you're not really, I
not town
mean,
meeting, to transfer.
it's not like you're appropriating it for something, you just wanna.
You're transferring it.
It's a
Actually,
transfer.
It's a transfer.
It's a transfer. So yes, I use the.
I mean, because in a sense, you're asking to move something to undesignated fund balance that by its very nature, at the end of the year, would become a part of the undesignated fund balance.
But we will see more requests between now and the end of the year for interdepartmental transfers. What we're looking at this evening aren't the final requests, correct?
But
So what
oh.
what I was thinking I would like to do is remove that money from the pot that could be considered for further interdepartmental transfers.
But no, that's, I think you're confusing two issues. We don't typically transfer from like when we do transfers from one department to another, we're doing it on the budget side. We're not doing it from the revenue side.
So that's not a,
yeah, I
this
mean,
wouldn't be a practice then that you would take from
Not-
these
no,
accounts?
No. When we have, every year when we do our budget, we do a balanced budget. Our projected revenues equal our proposed expenditures. And so when we do transfers between departments, we're doing it from the budget side. We're not typically including any revenues.
I understand that's how it's always been done.
So, I mean, and a couple of times, when there have been a couple of times, one, as Mr. Schultz indicated, at the beginning of the year, we did that, where we increased the revenue, education cost sharing, and we also increased two budget accounts. The general government and miscellaneous, specifically for health insurance on the town side, and then we also increased the Board of Education budget. That was a time where we went through the appropriations process, we increased the revenue, we increased an expenditure. And I believe there was one other time that we did it this budget year, and it had to do with, we increased the revenues for building permits, and we did an appropriation to purchase a new vehicle for the building official. And we did it those two times during this fiscal year. I mean, and we haven't done anything like that in several years, but this particular year we had, in each of those cases, there were extenuating circumstances. So, I don't know if that helps your understanding in any way.
Oh, I understand everything that you've said, but I would still maintain that we would have the ability to transfer from one revenue account to another, to an asset account. And I think originally you said, yes, we would have that ability to do that if we desired, but that your stance is that it's not necessary because in the next month or two, we're going to figure out what that net number is, and it's going to end up there anyway.
It becomes part, it becomes part of the undesignated fund balance by way of your operating results.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, we would have to, I mean, I think I'd have to think about if this is considered an appropriation of sorts, which we would need to go through the full appropriations process, which includes the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, I don't think so. I think it's a simple transfer, just like we're doing all these other interdepartmental transfers this evening
No,
to
it's the
cover.
selectmen first.
They start
Everyone.
with the Board of Selectmen.
We approved them 2 weeks ago, last week.
Hmm.
Just, I know, but like, do what you gotta do, but, sometimes the building department, pulls in an extra $100,000, cause you just can't
Yeah.
guess 18 months in advance what's coming down the pipe. You've never gotten a request to go spend that money. It ends up in undesignated fund balance, it was extra money, or it made up for a shortfall in something else that we didn't get, but,
So would we,
it
so let me just get a better level of comfort. then can we expect to have greater than $675,000 returned to the fund balance at the end of the operating year? I would expect that we should get at least 725 then.
From.
Right, you
yeah,
were looking that up
60,000.
when,
Yeah, I mean, in
And I'm just
looking at
talking
what,
50,
I mean,
not-
what I'm estimating we'll have, as an operating surplus, I'm looking at, say, about about $735,000 at this point.
Okay. And your estimate would include that overage of the
That's
interest-bearing
correct, yes,
accounts?
yes.
Okay, so 735. Okay,
Okay.
Which is about your number.
Well, right, right.
thank you.
Thank
for
you,
that,
Camille.
For that
But that's-
exercise.
But it's.
It's a good
to be-
conversation.
We need, because we're focusing on the fund balance and how to
Right.
grow it, so,
Mhm.
and how to safeguard it, so it's important.
Yep. Other questions from the board?
I mean, because the rating agencies for a credit, like what our credit is, they look for a 15% undesignated fund balance. That's what they'd like to see. So,
And we're at 8%?
yeah, about 8-ish, yeah.
Can't we be like old Lyme?
Just, oh my God,
How did they do
I
it?
could not believe that, yeah.
Clearly. How they do it, I don't know.
Tiny, tiny.
Other questions for Anna?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Our next item on the agenda is new business to approve a resolution appropriating $2.3 million for the replacement of water meters.
So who's here?
Mrs. Chair, would you mind taking John first, which is your B?
I don't mind at all.
I think he's going to be rather quick.
Yep.
aren't you?
Yes.
You're
Happy
right,
to
it's
move to
just
item
kind
B,
of-
a tax
Yeah.
collector's suspense list.
Mr. Cargill is out in the lobby. so
Okay,
John's-
not a problem.
Yeah, no
John, why
problem.
don't you, close it up?
Yeah, 'cause that was gonna be a bit.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hello,
Have you had a chance to look at the suspense list?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have any questions pertaining to it?
I have to see. I'm trying to remember if I do or not.
I actually just have a general question, John.
Sure.
So these, what's on this list are no longer assets of the town, but they're still collectible if that were possible. So
Yes.
I'm sure we asked this question last year. I probably asked it last year, but so what efforts, if any, do you make concerning the $26,000 that consists of the values of the list?
We don't actively collect these now, but I do have the option of going to an outside collection agency and turning the list over to them. And they would
Okay.
attach a fee, of course, for their own
Right,
measure, and then they could go after them themselves.
right. And do you feel that the fee that would be charged to you would kind of be
The f-
prohibitively expensive?
It
I
wouldn't
mean,
be charged to us, it's the fee they
Right.
apply to the balance.
Right, if they were to
And if they're
collect.
successful, then they would be able to
Yeah.
collect on it.
So, is it worth that effort for $26,000 or?
Well, sure, I mean,
Yeah.
if they're successful.
Right, okay. Okay,
Is this a typical amount of
It's a little
uncollected?
lower, actually, because
Thank
last
you.
year we had a couple of parcels, which was unusual, and it was over $40,000 last year.
Okay, so we're gonna just write all this off as a loss.
No, I mean, no, people do come in and they move back to state, and they have to register their cars, so there'll be some very old balances that'll be paid in
Mhm.
order for them to register.
Unless they're dead and they won't be
Right,
back.
well,
Mm.
no luck with that.
God bless them, but,
Yeah, Chapter 7.
okay.
For the companies that have gone out of business, if the owners of those businesses just simply incorporate under a different name, would that relinquish them from this?
Probably, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for John?
no.
Do we have a motion?
we need to read this, we need to read this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did any of you check to see if your own name is on there?
Yes,
I know, it's scary.
I did.
Scary thought, yeah.
Would you like me to read this? Or?
So,
Actually, we,
yeah, I really don't know what's appropriate to read into the record.
Okay, just the fact that I hereby certify that to the best of my knowledge, each tax on the attached suspense list, numbers 1 through 3, has not been paid, is deemed to be uncollectible at this time, and should be transferred to the suspense tax book in the amount of $25,925.97, which includes the years 2003 to 2017. Dated East Lyme, Connecticut, the 8th day
Okay.
of May.
Thank you. So I think what we do is just make a motion to approve this suspense list.
Yes, that's correct.
okay.
I will entertain that from one of the board members.
Okay, I will move that we approve the suspense list as provided, dated May 8th, 2019,
Is there a second?
Just specify the dollar.
The amount?
and the dollar amount, in the dollar amount of $25,925.97, including years 2003 through 2017.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Thank you, John.
Madam Vice Chairman, you need to sign this.
Sure.
Yes.
Lisa Paparazzi. Thank you. Okay, moving back up to letter A. Hi, Brad's here. This is our resolution appropriating $2.3 million for the replacement of water meters.
Okay, that's our business, just, okay, thank you.
Brad, come on, why don't you come on up to the podium as I do an introduction. We have been planning, we need to replace our water meters. Many of them are very old. As meters go, they will lose their accuracy over time. They'll slow down over time. We won't get a good reading. The Water and Sewer Commission has worked very hard on this, and they've come up with a plan that they can, again, fit it into their rate structure. This isn't, although this is bonding, this is plant bonding. Like, I think, you know, there is personnel at the water and the sewer company, but most of their expenses are infrastructure. All these pipes in the grounds, and all these pumps, and all these meters. So they're always planned for this kind of stuff. We don't anticipate an increase in water rates. There is you know, there's always increases in water rates as everything else, but this is part of the plan. These will be remote, these are radio frequency meters, so they'll be able to be read from home office. They won't need to take someone and go in each and every one of your driveways and read the meter.